We're entering a new era of business, a new era as a collective. It's an era of doing business from heart, from soul, from love, and from divine directive. It's a kind of business that is genuine and personal and transformative and evolutionary. Welcome to the Soul Sourced Business Summit. Hello to you. So I am here with Inarra Griffin, who I came to Inarra a while ago. A friend of mine had recommended I look at on her website because one of the things that I love doing is seeing people who are showing up in the arena of mind, body, and spirit in ways that are modern, that are contemporary, and also that are rooted and grounded in spirituality and expansive. And just with a clear but different voice. So when I came across Inarra, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And it felt just 100%, right that you would be here with us in Soul Source, the Soul Source Business Summit. So just to give you a snapshot, Inarra Griffin helps visionaries become New Earth influencers. The CEO of two companies, Millionaire Yogi and the New Earth Visionaries. Inarra is a digital events producer for the new digital era of online events. Her creative style of event planning, using the best of creative platforms, means her clients have been able to successfully pivot from live in the flesh to global interactive festivals, events, and conferences. Inarra is a published author, most recently of the Little Book of Influence, out now on Amazon. A public speaker on spiritual business, she uses a high priestess archetype and runs ceremonies and rituals with the rhythm of the moon, sun, and seasons. She mentors the 11 Kings, a program initiating men into mastery of cyclical magic. Having shapeshifted many times, she has run a successful property development company in London, UK, reaching 7 million, written 4 books, and is a branding expert. She lives in London and runs spiritual retreats in Bali, Glastonbury, and Tulum, Mexico. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. And it's such an honor and pleasure to have you here, Inarra. Thank you for being here with us.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
So, basically, Soul Source Business, the idea behind this is that the normal way that we get taught business in business school feels very patriarchal and feels very masculine in nature, but doesn't necessarily honor the feminine. And so Soul Source Business was really coming forward to open up to that. And I love your language around New Earth. So what is a New Earth? Just explain that a little bit to us.
Okay, great. Well, New Earth is actually a time that's been prophesized for thousands of years. And what we've got is we've just stepped into it. And that's because of astrological and astronomical signs and guidance that we have stepped into it. There have been a few. One is that we stepped out of the Mayan calendar. So we're literally out of time, not out of time. And another one was that at the winter solstice of 2020, we went into the age of Aquarius, which is another way of talking about New Earth. And so how I describe it is it's ancient wisdom meets the high frequency digital highway of tech, and it becomes a global village. And so you're able to interweave some of these really ancient kind of themes and methods. That's the divine feminine very much coming back. And you've also got a shift of this patriarchal era, which was about 6,500 years old. So we have only known that in our lifetimes. And you can see with the age of Aquarius, the shifts are showing up like even this conversation. and that we're in different places, but we're completely like you're in my kitchen, I'm on your couch with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're speaking the language of, as the Hopi Indians talked about, this is the time of the rainbow tribe,
Mm.
which comes in all different colors of the rainbow on the outside, but red on the inside. And there's this
Mm.
idea of connectedness. We are blood relatives. We are all indigenous.
Mm.
And that's a piece that I really speak into a lot, even white indigenous, which has been disrupted and removed.
Mm.
Um, it needs to find its way back as well.
Mm.
So, yeah, so that is New Earth.
It's amazing because, you know, uh, Sikhism, Kundalini Yoga is something that I sunk into quite a bit, um, primarily because it was speaking into the Aquarian age and also speaking into the marrying of the masculine and the feminine at this time. So it's amazing that you brought that up as that being a way of referencing the new earth, let's say. Because to me, it's quite a profound language. It's a language that is allowing us to come back into harmony with ourselves as earth beings, but also as, soul directive, So
Yeah.
yeah, thank you so much for that. That's absolutely amazing. So what is a new earth leader or influencer? What does that mean to you? How does the influencer show up in new earth?
Well, in this era, we're going to see a lot of women showing up as leaders, as we are seeing right now. And I think one of the examples is the vice presidency. First Black woman,
Mm.
first woman of Indian heritage,
Mm.
like first. And,
Mm.
even if I'm not particularly political in that sense, because
Mhm.
my interest as leadership is more in an archetypal spiritual way,
Mhm.
but I recognize how important that is. And let's say it could be very easy that an old man like Biden, just for whatever reason,
Mm.
disappears during this time, and she would find herself on the stage, like global stage. And
Mm.
that's the speed with which we're shifting, like
Mm.
right there. It's
Mm.
suddenly we've got a new archetype, massively important new archetype. And so New Earth leadership will have a lot of the methods of shifting the power dynamic from it used to be in patriarchal times, and we're still there. So, it's not like it just changes overnight, obviously. But we will start to see the old paradigms going. So corporate structures will fall down. The idea that bigger, better, faster, this kind of linear approach to life or to business progression. At the time of white men ruling everything is coming down. We are all delighted, of course, that in New Earth, you're seeing the leadership will not look like what it has.
Mm.
So there's an authenticity, which I've spoken about,
Mm.
which you can feel if somebody is authentic, and they will not necessarily look like you would expect a leader to look like. I'm
Mm.
used to seeing very different forms of leadership, so I can spot it, feel it, sense it.
Mhm.
But for the world, there's going to be like literally like your eyes are opening for the first time. You're seeing indigenous leaders who you have for our entire history of our lives, however long you've been on the planet this time, you will not have experienced indigenous leadership as being considered valued, right? You will see a certain way considered valued, and it's usually the faster, more burned out corporate model. So if you suddenly see an indigenous leader coming in who looks very alternative, but you can feel that authenticity, this is the era of that. It's meant to be, in certain prophecies, it's considered to be the time of the seven senses. So rather than the sixth sense, which is, ooh, I have a kind of feeling about something, the seventh senses is meant to be, in your heart. You know that this in front of you is a truth.
Mhm.
You know it is.
Mhm.
And yet it may not look like anything you've seen before, you know.
Mm, mm.
So it's exciting.
It's really interesting, the definition of masculine and feminine from this lens, right?
Yeah.
Because it plays out, like you say, it has played out in the dominance of the white male, but ultimately it is an energetic template as well that's actually been heavily in place. And
Yeah.
what I'm actually seeing more than ever is that the masculine is opening up to speak the language of the feminine, which is why I got so excited when I saw your King's work, you know, and the initiation of men, because I feel that that is so necessary, because so many men are wanting to, but you know, where is a template for that? It's not necessarily fully established for everyone. You know, some people do have templates where their mothers are fluent in that kind of masculine, feminine language, but many don't. You know, so there's a kind of a bit of a grapple around that. But really, it's a masculine learning to speak the language of the feminine, but equally, it's a feminine learning to speak the language of the masculine, isn't it? Um,
Yeah. Some of the power structures we'll see that will shift now is an open space to invite in collaboration. That's the
yeah.
feminine. In all genders, it's nothing to do with just being like a woman or a man identified or whatever else.
Mm,
Uh, but the spaciousness of that means that it's not considered better to be faster, more directive. Actually, cyclical is coming into being again. So there's
mm,
times I very much work with the moon, sun, ancient festivals, but I teach people in business, no, it's not time for you to push now. It's time
mm,
for you to dream now.
yeah.
Then it's time for you, perhaps there'll be a push phase, you know, certainly like visibility around full moon,
Mm,
uh, spring when you come out, and that's a great time to announce or start new projects. But there's also the autumn winter, which is very much about stepping back. And I've
mm,
just been in a lot of that space of changing some of the things that I've been doing in business and stepping out of coaching in a traditional way. I
mm,
used to run a lot of coaching trainings.
mm,
I stepped out of that, and you have no idea until you step out of something, and not even in the moment of the stepping out of it, the
mm,
impact it's had on your life.
mm.
Training is a masculine form, so I'm always, you know, there's this
Yes.
outward
Yeah.
helping. And then the feeling of like, oh, you know, just dropping
Hmm.
in this pause time has been delicious. And I've also heard something which I thought was really interesting, that the masculine can be like a soft breeze across a lake. It doesn't
Mm.
have to be this, you know, you must do, which is very corporate
Yeah.
and is just burnout material for
Yeah.
people. You know, I don't
Yeah.
think they lead happy lives.
Yeah, there's a subtle element of masculine, and I'm glad that you brought that up. There is a subtle element of masculine, and one of the ways that I liken it to, it's just one of the ways that of the expression, is when you feel held by a man, you
Yeah.
know? And it doesn't matter if you're male or female that's being held, but you know, the power of actually just being still and being held, you
Yeah.
know, and yeah, so there are subtle elements, and it's interesting when those subtle elements are allowed to be, you know. So that's what I'm hearing you say, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about numerology? Was coming up as you were speaking, because you obviously mentioned astrology and you mentioned the cycles of the moon and the sun and the stars that way. How, this is just an aside, because numerology is something that I absolutely have so much respect for. But
Yeah.
what comes up when I say numerology to you?
Oh, I also really respect it. It's not my top knowledge, you know,
Mm,
like go-to place,
mhm,
but I use it a lot. And recently I was very much drawn to changing my name by
mm,
a friend of mine who is very deeply involved in an ancient Hebraic numerology system.
mhm,
And she was when you do her system, it's quite detailed. It's not the usual where you add all the numbers up and you come up with these sort of codes.
mhm,
But she gets often you get a hexagram, so it's a six-pointed star, and the center will have codes, and then
mm,
you'll having all the points of the stars, these different codes. And what she was working with me to shift was the central aspect of what's going on, which is my sort of spiritual destiny with the work of New Earth. And I had a calling for this. This was all this, so many things have happened in the last year, including sort of receiving messages that I must become a New Earth leader, supporter, like push them out, help them with all the skill set I have. I must stop coaching, which I've stopped doing. And so, I suddenly had this thing going on, which was like, she asked me, "Do you want to change your name?" And I just said, "Yes, I do. Yes, I do." And I have no idea why, but when we worked out the name, then she did a certain ceremony to wait for the name to arrive. The name arrived almost immediately, Inarra, which means shining light. It was this whole sequence of events, but when you do the coding of it, she had to add an extra R to it. So it's normally spelt with one R, and we've added two for it to have the right code for me in the center of all the work I'm doing around New Earth. And so I totally respect numerology. I'm living it. I'm experiencing it. And it's the sound of the name has this, it's this idea that sounds are generating life around you, and people respond to me very differently with this name, including my parents who said, "That's an amazing name." You've written a book. So that was their sort of understanding of it logically. Why have I done this? But they were completely, "Oh, yeah, it really suits you. It's the right name for you." They really got that.
Yeah, I can really feel the resonance of that as well when I hear and feel you as Inarra. I can really feel that. The same thing happened to me. I changed my name. And it was directive, but I didn't have the full understanding of why I was doing it at the time. It was only later, and I just shortened both my names. So I was Natasha Denise Mitchell, and I just shortened it to Tash Mitch. But the difference that made in my coding was profound, and I didn't realize at the time that's what I was doing until later on. So I can completely hear you with that. I can completely hear you with that. Yeah.
So you are a New Earth leader, and so am I, influencer. And that's why we found each other. It's not easy. It's the frequencies, it's the languaging, it's what we stand for. And that piece, which is, I have no idea how you found me. It was a bit like that. But I looked at a video of you and I recognized your language. And it was like, oh, you're speaking into existence what I am speaking into existence. This is Earth. Yeah.
And it's amazing to me. It's a language that's very fluent and fluid. Because one of the things that I'm sensing and feeling with you as it is with me is that there's placing a sort of linear structure onto it so that people can understand exactly what it is that they're doing. Otherwise it's just, we just do the dance, right? But ultimately the language itself, there's a fluidity to it, and it just feels natural and normal. You know what I mean? Like the language of natural and normal for the most profound things, the language of natural and normal has been rooting itself with me. The language of magic and normality, of miracle and normality, it's just been rooting deeper and deeper. So I can hear that as well in what you're saying. Yeah. So how can I asked you to ask some questions, and it's interesting because these questions that you're asking are definitely not questions that I would have asked. So I'm finding them incredibly eye-opening and also incredibly expansive. So thank you so much, because I invite people to ask questions. Not everyone does, and sometimes when people do, it gives you a real amazing snapshot of where they are, and also a real opening into a different dimension in terms of what this space could have contained. So how can the shift from this form of leadership bring clarity to life and business? This new earth leadership. How is this bringing? What kind of clarity is it bringing in?
Well, part of the piece that I wanted to speak into for you and your audience is this piece between clarity of soul purpose.
Mm.
And I would mention a couple of things around that. So a lot of the work that I've done in the past with people is mostly women. Like 95% of my clients have been women. That's why I'm aiming towards men now. It's just dropped in that 5%, the good men who I end up working with, they need this extra piece right now. So I'm directing something there, And really what it is, it's like if you are so clear even on the bits that are considered unacceptable, even the bits that you might have shame about, or you might have, oh, I can't mention that bit, that is where your power lies, right there. So when you bring out this sort of new earth thing, it's non-conformist. You're not trying to be the same as every other Donald Trump, right? As a leader. I mean, if that's a leader, oh my God, is all I can say. That's the very least I'll say on that matter. But it looks like it should be because it had property, bad business dealings, I would say. But there's a sort of like you would expect it to be there, right? What will show up if the audience, can step out of your own way and think, oh, yeah, I am enough. I've got this really weird selection of interests and skill sets, and not by dimming the light on it and not by, sort of finding it, how could you fit in with this other system? No, you don't fit in. It's about not fitting in. And so the difference is most of the women that I've dealt with who I'm, let's say, walking out of corporate, will have this thing which will be, oh, how can I possibly be successful if somebody thinks I'm just going into healing versus this corporate identity, And it's actually, no, that is the identity. Your soul purpose is the thing that streams life through you and light to others from you. So the more you dim it down, it feels inauthentic, it feels suppressed, and you can feel that around anybody. So I'll give you an example. One of the women that I was working with, she came to me. She's American, lives in Australia. Super nice. I met her at a wedding, actually, in Bali, and we ended up speaking in the same way that I've met you. Super excited about it. And she said, I really want to work with you as a mentor to, shift my business. So I said, great. So let's have a talk. What are you into? Oh, I'm into yoga. So the first level of listening to this, because I work with a lot of people in alternative creative things, is like, okay, yoga, great, and there are another 50,000 a week coming out of yoga teachers. It doesn't say anything. So when we got deeper, and I was sure she was very good at what she did, but it's like, okay, let's go a little deeper. Then we find out some of the aspects of yoga. But the thing that was the real bingo moment was she said, oh, and I do have this other piece, which was, I had a stillbirth. And so I had to look at all the shadow of women's birthing process. And I said, that's the piece right there. That's the piece that you think is too traumatic for the world and unacceptable. It's not squeaky clean like the yoga piece. And so I worked with her to develop that piece. So what we came up with was, rather than focusing on the trauma, because trauma in business doesn't work. It's like you just saying, oh, I've got this disease. It's more like, what was the outcome when you got the knowledge from that trauma? And so we came up with the unexpected birth. And she does a lot of work with women. Women will have this idea of the fantasy of the little girl thinking, I'm going to have the family and the baby's going to be perfect and all of this. And then what if you are one of the ones who has the unexpected birth? And nobody talks about it. Nobody really goes there. So a big chunk of her business refocusing into the super niche she was creating is that. Wow. And she goes through all the stuff with as a doula, and all the yoga around birth and early childhood and conscious parenting and all of that, and the shadow aspects of what happens if you don't get that super fabulous birth that looks like, like the perfect birth. She's the one who deals with it. That makes her exceptional. and everything. Like, if you can resonate with this, what are the, somebody said to me once, what's the story that you are hiding?
Mm.
And you'll go to your dirty little secrets or whatever you think your dirty little secrets are. And I was like, oh. And she said, that's the story right there. And it's true. That's what makes you exceptional. And
Yes.
so when I was doing business, a light version of that was, there was a point when I've never been trained in business. I'm a street smart business head, right?
Mm.
It's all just the way that I've operated. And I'm at a level of mastery now. But
Mm.
in the previous life,
Mm.
I was a total hippie, ganja smoking, like took photographs, traveled around the world. I had no interest in money
Mm.
as such.
Mhm.
And roll on, I end up in this property world.
Mm.
I really ended up in this property world because it was not like I wanted to study property. It's like there was an opening and I walked in and I thought, this is of interest. All of a sudden, I'm in a very strange space because I've got tattoos, and I think what it looks like to go to a banker's meeting is I'm supposed to dress in this suit. This is the corporate identity. I'm
Mhm.
supposed to look a certain way, and I have got tattoos on my fingers.
Yeah.
And so there was this moment when I was, oh my God, like I have to hide the hands. And
Mhm.
I realized even in the meeting, and we're even talking about millions at this point, and
Mm.
I'm with the group of bankers who are exactly what you would expect them to
Mm.
look like. And I am just trying to find a way to hide my hand.
Mm.
I've only got them on one hand. And so
Mm.
I had this absurdity of, like casual, but my hand is hidden. I spent the whole meeting focused on
Wow.
these tattoos. Like, how could I hide the tattoos?
Yes.
And it was years ago, but it was that moment of thinking that was insane. Like, I
Mm.
spent the whole of that meeting, this epic meeting, worrying about what they thought about me. Was I good
Mhm.
enough? That's a big question that a lot of entrepreneurs have. Am I good enough? And it was like, okay. And then somebody said to me, you are really good at business. It was a boyfriend at that time who'd been to the London School of Economics. And because
Mm.
he had that title, I
Mm.
was like, oh, now I can receive this piece of,
Yeah.
acknowledgement. And he
Yeah.
said, and your tattoos make you you. So don't
Yes.
hide them.
Yes.
Well, that's an
Oh,
example of the hiding that we do.
yeah. That's an
Yeah.
amazing story. That really is. In yoga, there's Satnam, which is I am truth. And a lot of times when we're doing repetitions of things, there's a repetition of Satnam, Satnam, Satnam. And the deeper it goes into cellular structure, the more you start to realize that that little statement is very profound. I am
Good.
truth. I am
Yeah.
truth in all moments. I am truth, and then you start to feel into the places that you're not truth. And,
Yeah.
and that, like you say, is where the medicine is. And primarily also when we're here to help people, or we're here to bring empowerment, or we're here to, maybe give a reflection of a piece of a puzzle that actually gives someone a sense of completion. A lot of times what we're going into is a parts that they're not really acknowledging as truth, you know? So I really love what you've brought forward there. That's quite amazing. And the environments that feel so intimidating to be your truth, which a lot of times feels like those masculine intellectual environments, and the masculine sort of like physical material environments,
Completely. Yeah.
that aren't acknowledging soul, those kind of environments.
I mean, that's part of it. It's not to acknowledge emotion.
Yeah.
It's to completely erase yourself of the feelings that you have. In fact, the feelings are the indicators of whether you're on a happy path and
Yeah.
life. And for me, that's how the money showed up. The more I am authentic, true, happy, not hiding anything about myself, so nobody can hurt me, right? When you're
Mm.
that open, the
Yes.
more the money flows because it's
Yeah.
part of the currency.
Yes. I love
Yeah,
that.
it's
That
current.
uh, currency and current. I love that, because well, we're gonna get into that. But how can clarity lead to the flow of abundance? Because you've just started to touch on that now. But clarity and abundance, and we're going to get into the money piece, because I think that's a very, very big piece. But yeah, clarity and abundance.
Well, we're on the right track with this, because if you think, and it's a question that you can ask yourself, what are your highest values? What are your three highest values? And then I do an exercise where I ask you, what are your highest values and what are your three key passions? And not about business, just what do you love doing?
Yeah.
So when you get that rawness out of somebody, they are speaking the blueprint of why they're on the planet, who they really are at source level. And that piece, when you amplify that piece, which will have no shame. Shame is taught by cultures and many religions. Shame is one of the most awful, it should be like banished shame, because we shame people into behavior, we shame them into control, we shame them to make them behave, right? And when you can get rid of all of that and you are like, I just love this thing that I do, and these are my values, then you will start to operate at a very high frequency. So you can test in with yourself, for instance. So generosity is one of my highest values. And I can feel when somebody is anal and retentive and there's no generosity in the space, and that's a cue for me to step out, step away from this. It may look like a good deal. It may occur like a happy place to live. If the generosity is not flowing, then it's an indicator for me, like, get out right now. And really, it also is like, so move that way. It's like an indicator that you go towards some of the most generous people I've ever met are the poorest people in the world. But they were the most generous because they're all about hospitality. So they invite you in for a cup of tea or a chai or something, and you can feel the abundance around them. Then other people, like those bankers who I was hanging out with briefly, you can feel the control, the sphincter, like this. Because the other insight that I had around the money piece, that was around about that time when I had the whole tattoo thing going on and feeling out of sorts, like I never fit in, which is a big story for me the whole of my life, really.
Yeah.
I also had this piece that, hang on, the flow just went sideways. Hang on. What happened there? That generosity is a way that you can negotiate, right? And I had understood naively, like I think a lot of people do, banks have laws. These laws exist. They are true. When you've signed a contract, this means that. As if, some people are like, I couldn't renegotiate. I couldn't relook at something because I've signed a contract. What you realize at that level of banking is it's all negotiable, all of it, 100%. There is nothing that is not negotiable. And so if you come into something with like different alternative angles of ways of thinking and you're generous with it, so it's like out there, it's not this suppressed, how to control a situation, you can actually maneuver things into your favor hugely.
Yeah. There's something about being in the moment that needs generosity. I mean, to have presence and to be in this moment means that you have to be saying yes to the moment. And that's what I'm hearing you say when you say generosity is that sort of yesness. It's showing up with a sense of yesness, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, I think no is, I'm a yes person. So I say yes to everything. It would be a tendency. But the no's that I've said have been the more important than the yeses I've said, actually. Because when I create my boundaries of what is like this is a good place for me to be, and this is
Mm-hmm.
definitely not a good
Yes.
place. Like 2 inches that way is not a good place.
Mm-hmm.
It can occur like, oh, I could put up with, or I could make do with. But then again, going back to heart and essence, will you really be happy with that?
Mm-hmm.
And I just had a conversation a minute ago, actually, with a friend of mine who's a coach, and he said he asked me to coach him sort of on quite detailed things in his life for expansion. But he said, somebody asked me, they were convincing me to do this thing for only 20 minutes. Like, just, it's okay. Just, it's
Mm-hmm.
only 20 minutes. It's
Mm-hmm.
okay. And he said, I was so pissed off that I've ended up selling my soul for this 20 minutes. And I said to him, it wouldn't matter if it was a minute or 5 days doing this thing that you're not aligned to. The more mastery you will get with that, you'll be able to say no faster to it. But I'm like this, that's a no. That's a
Mm-hmm.
no.
Mm-hmm.
Just like that. And it doesn't have to be heavy or angry or all of these other things. So anyway, then he left a message to get out of the thing that was being sold to him as 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And he's elated. He's a different energy, like casting off the chains.
Yeah, yeah. It's honoring the self in the moment as well. So there is a yes, but the yes is I'm hearing the sort of internal, external yes, and how sometimes that can be different to what's
Yeah.
going on. It's like when you're saying yes to yourself, you can be saying no to something else. But yeah, I'm still hearing that yesness, and also the honoring of truth, the honoring of what's true in this moment.
1 minute of selling your soul is the same as 5 days of it, is the same
Yeah.
as 3 years of it. Being in a relationship that doesn't work and convincing yourself that it's acceptable is the same minute that in that moment that this isn't working. And then
Yeah.
you stay in it. It's
Mm.
like, so the same is true of business, same is true of life.
Yes.
But the indicators are really strong there. So if you get into flow of it's like, this is a no over there for me, but this is a yes. And
Mm.
then how do I feel? Oh, I feel so good when I'm over here. Then
Mm.
that will naturally lead to the money for
Mm.
sure. And it doesn't
Mm.
mean we all need to be billionaires. I haven't got an interest in that way in money.
Mm-hmm.
But there are certain things that require a vast amount of money to mop up the damage that's gone on right now. So I stepped over that line. It's like I said, really, I've been a hippie all my life. I have no interest. My life is still the same when I've made money or haven't made money. It's
Mm.
very similar. I do my yoga, I drink my matcha lattes, I play my singing bowls. There's not really a vast difference, but I have become interested in working with large sums of money or people who are working with large sums of money because I'm up for the influence now of making a better earth for people,
Yes.
planet, animals.
What
And
is money? What's money, Inarra?
what is it? It's
Yeah.
frequency.
Frequency.
Frequency. Yeah. And
Mm.
current frequency, it's the same thing. Originally, money was these these things which, for the goddess Juno,
Mm-hmm.
they were called manata. It was
Mm.
tokens of love that you showed, these
Mm.
tokens,
Mm-hmm.
to the goddess for your favor. And
Wow.
so money was favor. Money
Mm.
was alignment with love,
Mm.
alignment with love.
Mm.
And then it
Mm.
became a thing, and then it became a bartering system. It should show up. I mean, maybe you're not here to work with a lot of it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's totally cool. It's not about like everybody needs billions or anything, like I was saying.
Mm-hmm.
However, I also feel that spiritual people back off money because we've been taught this old story of, simple life, good people don't have money. And
Mm.
I was taught that in my family. Definitely, the rich people are assholes, and my father still has that. It's hilarious. Like, and he
Mm.
knows I work in business, and he's like, "Oh, they're all corrupt," and he's got this Northern English man way
Yeah.
of. He was not in the South where it was a favored money system, and he went to school with kids who had no shoes. So
Mm,
his currency
mm,
is all academic. It's all academia is his currency. He
mhm,
doesn't need a lot of money to fulfill his,
mm,
destiny, if you like.
mhm.
Some of the shifts I had to make to be able to work in business were to get rid of those family conditioning
Yeah,
stories.
yeah.
The good earth people with no shoes were the ones that were really better than the rich assholes, and
Mm,
all people with money must be assholes. And I was like,
mm,
whoa, you
mm, mm.
know, that doesn't leave us anywhere to go.
Well, the thing with money, though, is it's basically is very different to the currency that you were talking about in terms of, the exchange with the goddess. I mean, money is designed to a large extent to exclude certain people and include others, and at the heart of it, we feel and sense that generally. And also, I mean, you only have to go to a bank and read the small print to understand that for a lot of people, all of that is weaved in a way that's meant to shut you out and not ask too many questions. A lot of people don't have a desire to read the 20 pages of small print. Do you know what I mean? So it basically, there is an exclusivity, but an exclusion also that goes on. And it leaves a lot of people feeling that they don't understand money, feeling the soullessness in the center of it, and wondering, and also that sort of sense of pushing it away because of the exclusion factor, but also needing it because our system is designed to have money in it on a physical level until we find some other way of bartering. So it's kind of all of those things. And what I get a sense of in the arena of people who are doing spiritual work, people who are doing personal development work, people who are doing work that are meant is going out into the world to create expansion on human levels. And this is a huge generalization because not everybody fits into this same boat. But a lot of times there's a lot of confusion around money, because there's a focus on the soul and then the realization that, well, it doesn't feel to have any soul in it. And one of the things that I've actually started to realize is that there's something coming forward of how do we instill soul? How do we instill light? How do we instill that vibrancy of divinity at the center and the core of money? What would you say to that?
Well, I would say that money is neutral.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at how indigenous culture works, there is a lot of value in people who do things to help the community, right?
Mm,
So the doing of something is considered valuable. But then let's say you've got the shamans who don't do so much, right?
mm,
They're not out there planting and growing and
mm,
doing all of the things that are the heavy labor. They are channeling the messages for the tribe. They are receiving insights.
mm,
That would be considered of equal value.
mm,
What's happened with money is that it's in the hands of people who are given acknowledgement, such as lawyers, bankers, corporate entities, etc., have had the money. For us to shift the New Earth paradigm, those of us who are the shamans or the medicine women need to get the money because we need money in the hands of ethically spiritual people. And to have them, I mean, that's a big shift for people when I'm working with them as an energy. When they want to do their spiritual work, and I'm like, this has as much value as the top banking lawyers, whatever. They can't get it. They don't get it because it's not taught. But when you shift your energy to that, like for instance, even yoga, there is hard facts on that yoga originally was a path of simplicity. But it was also the Ashtanga system, for instance, was taught to men of high-ranking Brahmin priests. So it was not for women. It was not for the warrior castes or the lower castes of India. It was just for Brahmin men, high-speaking priest types, right? And then you look at its evolution as it's come along the way, and we've had key women who have altered that state of it, and then it's become a viable business. And I know that at least 10 years ago, the figures on it were 27 billion in the States alone. That's what the yoga world is worth. So now 10 years on, I don't know where I haven't seen the latest figures, but you can imagine it's worth billions and billions. And so look at how the spiritual system is now starting to move with the currency or the value of it. And it really ultimately is about value. So we're talking about exclusion. For me, it's not exclusive. It's there is a choice in it of whether it's exclusive or not. The neutrality, like, you know, some of the things that I see when poor kids get to have what their version of money is, they get the fast car, they got the girls, they got, you know, it's all of that usual thing. It's the hip hop fantasy. So then you see their depiction of money, because I like hip hop. So you see it's like all the money, showing the money, and then they're wearing these disgusting furs, which is just abominations of animal cruelty. Then you're seeing the sort of misuse of women, right? All the sisters are really treated very badly. And you start to get, oh, that's your version of what wealth is. That is the version that goes out. Actually, some of the versions that I'm most impressed with is, we were talking about Prince earlier, the amount of money he gave without ever signing his name to it, without ever being acknowledged as one of the biggest philanthropists. You know, he was supporting so many causes, and a lot of young Black kids who were in the most destitute areas of the States. He was right in there dealing with that, but not acknowledging it, not needing the acknowledgement. I know he's an audacious, wild being, but this is the piece that's hidden. It's all silent. It wasn't this, hey, you know, I got the money, I'm going to deal with the inner city. Nothing. It was just this neutral, I'm going in to get this job done. And I have a feeling that if we could see it more like that, that it doesn't have to be audacious. It's authentic. It's neutral. It's okay. It's safe. You don't have to have the attitude like suddenly, you know, I got the money. Then we'll see a big shift. But it probably comes from education, and it has to be like permission given.
Yes.
So sometimes some of my clients have needed me to give them permission. Like I've needed, you know, I needed that moment from that boyfriend who said, you are good at business. And I was like, I just received that. Oh, you know, I have needed to say that to these, particularly women I've worked with, to say, you are amazing at what you do. You have permission to go get rich. You have permission to go use that wealth, because I know that in their hearts, they're going to be the ones that, like Prince, behind the scenes, are doing this incredibly needed work, you know, helping our planet. So that's where it's non-exclusive. Anybody can get there.
I'm hearing you talking, as you're speaking, I'm hearing the rewriting of the template or something along the lines, you know, the recreation of the blueprint, you know?
Yeah.
And a lot of times you have to understand that there's a blueprint to be created. So when you're talking about currency, that's what I'm really hearing. The current of money is really about the blueprint, and what blueprint are you holding, and how it shows up, you know, in different ways for different people. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much. This has been absolutely amazing. It's your snapshots and your viewpoints, you know, shining the light in all of these different areas has been absolutely stunning.